Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Well, there are divergent views on the way forward for this country. Professor Wole Soyinka was asking President Buhari to declare emergency on the security situation in the country. Professor Patu told me on his own says he believes Nigeria needs revolution, but it's a revolution of the mind that is needed urgently. I've been speaking with Mr. Yinka Odumakin, spokesperson of the Afenifere, a socio-political organization in Nigeria. I've now been joined by a former presidential candidate of the ACPN, a former Minister of Education, and a former Vice President of the World Bank. Dr. Obi Ezekwesili joins us from our Abuja studio. Let me turn to her for a moment. Thank you so much, Dr. Ezekwesili, for joining us today on the program. You went to Harvard, the School of Kennedy for Governance, study public policy. And at this point, and a critical point in our country, when there has been a lot of call, one day, some Nigerians are calling for revolution. The present government said, no, the revolution that is needed is what they are doing presently. Others believe that the country needs a state of emergency in the security sector. Some people say it's a revolution of the mind. At this point in our history, what do you suppose, Dr. Ezekwesili, that the nation needs urgently?
I think that it is critical for the people in government to accept that the country is certainly not in a good place at all. That ownership of your situation is an important and critical step towards solving a problem. If the government pretends that all is well with Nigeria, then it shows how absolutely isolated from the issues and challenges of the people that they lead, they are. What the government needs to be doing, and I think I was quite public about this many weeks ago, I said that it was necessary for the president and the political leadership at the National Assembly to come together and to convene what I consider a State of the Union conversation. The state of our union is unsalubrious. It is important for there to be a very serious conversation. Everything seems to have fallen apart. We practically have no institutions that are standing in their credibility at this time. And you know that in the definition of state collapse, when you look at the issue of the security, and you look at the issue of the economy, and you look at the issue of the social cohesion, you look at the issue of political stability, when these four things are in the negative, then you are fast heading toward what is known as state collapse. Initially, I kept saying that we were a fragile country. Now, we're fast heading toward the threshold where you have a state collapse. And we can't stand watching while that happens. And so it's important that those who hold the reins of power at this time, at least they have the authority, even if they may not have absolute legitimacy, considering the way that there are too many voices saying that there needs to be a conversation about the country. Their authority can be used as a basis for convening what would be a very honest conversation on what we do with Nigeria. Nigeria is not in a good place at all.
Dr. Ezekwesili, when you were in government, I remember there was a loud call for a sovereign national conference, SNC. There was even a group called PNACO that they set up their own kind of conversation outside of what the government said it was doing at the time. There was also a time that the past government of Goodluck Jonathan that is brought together the confab. There's been a lot of national conversations on the way forward for this country. A lot of people have described them as mere talk shops because the practicality of those talking conversation avenue or fora have not materialized into policies. So the question is that are you suggesting yet another talk shop, or for us to have those documents that are on the table now executed?
So a talk fest would not be of any value to us. In most of the conferences that I've held, it has always been a conversation amongst the political class, mostly, today there's a level of maturity that has happened within the wider public. And so the concept of the office of the citizen has taken such strong foothold in our national consciousness. And so you cannot in any way organize a conversation amongst the political class because they would not be able to really get to the root of the issues that need to be deliberated on, and they would have the kind of impetus to move toward, move from talk to action. And so what I foresee is the kind of conversation that looks at the broken social contract that should exist between the people and those that govern them. And that's a different kind of conversation, essentially, because that kind of a conversation means that the convening of that meeting is also co-led by the citizens, so that the citizens are at the heart of what that conversation would lead to, so that when that conversation summarizes the actions that need to be taken, nobody would backtrack on them because they are the nucleus of what a new social contract between the citizens and the political class and leadership would be.
All right, because the constitutionality of what you're talking about is a big question here, because that has always been the bottom line each time there is a national conversation on the way forward. And let me ask you, and put you in a rather tough situation on the spot right now. If you are saddled with the responsibility of leading that kind of conversation, how would you go about it? Because you said that there is an urgent need for that kind of conversation. Where would you start from, for example?
So the first thing you would have to do would be to mobilize the thoughts that are prevalent and the key issues that are being put on the table by the different publics in Nigeria. And so whether it's sectoral or geographical or it is thematic, you have to bring all of this together, and then you have to, through a process that is civil society-led, emerge those voices, essentially, that the citizens will consider to be the voices of reason that would be with the political class to discuss with Nigeria what's the state of our union, and then to determine what must happen. The reality that is haunting us is the fact that our political class never matured. It never matured beyond this prebendalist class, a class where everything is about transactions. And so while the political class has been engaged in transactions, the issues of national development suffered. And because they've suffered, we now see that the center cannot hold, whether it's in terms of our security. Look at our security establishment. Imagine a situation where the Nigerian police and the Nigerian army are fighting publicly. And, do you know what that says of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of this country? That two establishments under his control just finished meetings with him. The next thing we were reading, their public spat. That's terrible. So security is eroded. You look at the economy is in a dire strait. We cannot be growing at less than 3%, while our population growth rate is almost 3%. We certainly are not growing in that sense. And so you look at the joblessness, the state of fallenness of most of the young people in the country, just, it's so dispiriting. Our unemployment level is 24% generally, but when you look at the the youthful population, it goes as much as 40%. What are you going to do with this? You look at the education crisis, you look at the health crisis, you look at the infrastructure crisis, you look at the fiscal, as in financial, public finance crisis, you look at the debt crisis, the paralysis is unbelievable. We've got too many crises.
Ezekwesili, apologies, let me butt in quickly. The big question, you've raised a whole lot of issues here, and the question a lot of people will be asking is whether or not your political ambition is still alive as of what we saw in 2019. The big question will be whether or not you will be throwing your hat in the ring if you have answers to some of these questions. What are you going to be doing about it?
So, so like I said, if anyone, whether I am the one or it is President Buhari who has this authority now, are faced with the kind of situation that the country finds itself in, taking ownership of the problem is a critical first step. And so the next thing is going to be to establish certain parameters of credibility in your willingness to confront the challenges. The challenges are not being confronted.
All right, you quite did not answer my questions, Ezekwesili. The question is what you are practically going to be doing as a citizen of Nigeria. We saw you wanted to become president in 2019. That did not come alive. Are you going to throw your heart in the ring yet again to convince Nigerians that some of the answers you're giving to them right now, you are going to put them into practice?
Okay, so you know that definitely you're talking about 2023. The answer is in the womb of time concerning that. But what I'm talking about right now is that Nigeria does not have until 2023 to tackle the kinds of challenges that are upon us. We must figure a way to disrupt this pattern of failure. This failure is not sustainable, Shehu. You and I don't have until 2023 to address the multiple crises.
Right.
And so there has to be a mechanism that enables us get to a new normal. And yes, we have this constitutional environment where we've got the democracy in process. But when countries are faced with these kinds of challenges, they have to rise up to the leadership of having the conversation that enables them to define a pathway out of the paralysis.
So
we are in a state where we cannot afford business as usual.
Some of the greatest commodity in leadership is hope. Have you lost hope in this present government of doing the right thing and confronting our challenges with the right answers?
So hope is often the case when you can see a level of evidence of the determination of the person that you're putting your hope in to actually accept that there is a problem. To the extent that this government has consistently failed to accept that it has not done well and that it is not doing well, and to the extent that they are impervious to the ideas of a conversation to enable this country to do better, to that extent do I not have much of any hope in their ability to solve the problems that we have on hand. However, they do have the privilege of being those with the reign of power. And yet, it is important that we should continuously engage them to say that don't let the roof fall. There was a book written, This House Has Fallen. Don't let it come to pass. We can avert that by all of us rising to a place of leadership and having this necessary conversation. Nigeria
I would
is
like to butt in yet again,
crisis.
Dr. Ezekwesili, just for a moment. We've not been joined on the telephone by the Senior Special Assistant to the President of Media and Publicity, Malam Garba Shehu. We've been trying and struggling to get him via Skype. He's in Dora, the home country of President Muhammadu Buhari, in Katsina State. The network from my engineers, they said from that end is not pretty good. That's why you may not be able to find him on Skype at the moment. But he joins us via telephone. Thank you so much, Malam Shehu, for joining us on the program. And you hear some of the comments of some of my guests on the program tonight, Mr. Odumakin, Dr. Ezekwesili. These are eminent Nigerians in their own right. They say the country, using the words of Dr. Ezekwesili, at a tipping point, at a moment of collapse. What would you say, especially when the president said he's steadfast and he's doing his best? Is the best, do you think and suppose, is enough and convincing for Nigerians at the moment?
If the country is collapsing in somebody's dream. And they should wake up and see the reality on the ground. Nothing is collapsing. Country is strong, it's moving on. We understand what is going on. people have gone into election with one mind, to win and not to lose. Democratic elections are held expecting two outcomes. You win or you lose. We have candidates who went into the election to win and nothing other than to win. So having lost the election, they are devising new ways, to see that they can grab power. And so let's see how they can contest and get power.
How do you convince, Madam Chair, how do you convince an average Nigerian who has no job, who's not able to put food on the table, who knows the figures about the unemployment rate in the country, where there are reports of the nation being the poorest country in the world based on the statistics available, where a situation where army has killed 3 policemen, the security situation is in the southwest of the country is causing a lot of concern for traditional rulers in that area and citizens around the country. Is that a dream or reality too?
No, it's a reality, but which of those crimes, which of those problems you have cited is imagined for the first time because Buhari is the president of Nigeria? Are you saying that there had not been armed robbery? We are a country in which political opponents were being executed one by one, including this country's attorney general. Chief law officer of the country was executed. Not even a day of investigation was allowed. No, it was passed off as armed robbery. And nobody looked back. The country didn't collapse. It's not going to collapse now. Unemployment, yes, we are worried about it. Government is doing as much possible, and there will be more that we'll be doing, especially through diversification of the economy, agriculture, industrialization, and all of that. So the kidnappings, they had to step with the country. Farmer had a crisis. Go and read the colonial times. The British Parliament had debated this thing happening in Nigeria. So, well, the thing is that, yes, these things, they have ebbed and they have flowed. And the thing to do to judge our government fairly is how responsive is the government? How well are we doing? I think the overall thing, the picture we have, is that, look, when we came in, the issue was corruption. Now, the elite in the country doesn't want corruption on the front pages of our newspapers. They would rather make the media to talk about insecurity and the killings and the tribal warfare. That's all they are interested in. Because if that issue takes the front pages, corruption will come back. And they don't want a discussion on the issue of corruption. They don't want a discussion on restructuring of the economy and the free-for-all that was there for them. This is the president who says, no, it won't be business as usual. You come and take oil well, and then you make money from it, go and buy people, and then they say whatever you want. This president won't give oil well. This is the problem with Buhari.
All right, let me pause you for a moment. The conversation will continue, but we'll take a break. Before we take a break, let me quickly show you this on our Did You See That for this week. This happened in the Kenya Parliament when a female lawmaker brought her child to the chamber, and this is what the presiding officer told her.
Sergeant at Arms, the Honorable Zuleka, you must get out of the house immediately. The Honorable Atandi. Order members. Order.
There is a measure that has since been taken based on this situation to provide a crutch afterwards at the Kenyan Parliament. Did you see that? Well, up next on the program, promises of a consolidation of plans and taking Nigeria to a higher height. Is the Buhari government on the right track? We'll find out more after this break.